Hello and welcome to Alaska's Political Pipeline. I'm political reporter Will Courtney, and sitting down alongside me, Mayor Edna DeVries from the Mat-Su. Mayor, welcome to the program.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, we're here today to talk about your bid for governor. There's a lot of people running for governor. We're trying to talk to as many as possible.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about why you want to be Alaska's next governor.
Okay. I think there are some challenges facing our state, and I think everybody will agree with that. But in the Mat-Su borough, we have faced many of those challenges, whether it has been people leaving, and our borough is the fastest growing area in the state because people are moving there. And I think some of those things are the transparency we have, the limited government that we do, our openness, our resource development, election integrity, and so there are a number of things like that that I think would benefit the whole state. And so I'd like to take that template and travel around the state, which we have been doing, and we're getting a good response to, yeah, that's something we can do. In fact, even down in the Kenai and also up in Fairbanks, they have circulated some petitions to change their election time from October to November, so they get a larger participation and make it more convenient, because it gets sort of confusing sometimes to the voter out there. Oh, I'm supposed to go in April? Well, no, that's Anchorage. Oh, October, no, yeah, you know. So I'm glad to see that happening, because I think we have some good ideas from the borough.
What was the moment you decided that you wanted to run for governor? Not last November, but the November before, I was just re-elected as mayor of the Mat-Su borough. I ran unopposed, and so I was pretty well set. The term was for 4 years, and in December of that year, so that would have been a year ago last December, I have a very strong belief in God, and so I spend time praying, and I just felt like that the Lord was saying to me, are you willing? And so I talked to my husband, and we prayed about it, and we felt that, yeah, we had, as I've already said, some good things happening in the valley, and people have felt good about where we were taking and leading the valley, and we felt that the whole state could benefit from that. So we said yes, and we still hemmed and hawed, and I think it was 2 or 3 months before we actually filed, because of course we wanted to talk to our kids and as well as others. But then we filed, and so now we're running. Yeah. What do you think your experience leading the Valley as Mat-Su Borough Mayor, what experience from that role do you think is going to transfer well into the governor?
I do a blog for the assembly meetings, both before and after. Our checkbook is online, so those two things to me are more transparency. Sometimes if you do talk to people on whatever method, social media or interviews, or even people at the grocery store, and you can explain to them, you know, really what is going on, or what your perspective is of what's going on and how they can get involved. As mayor of the Mat-Su borough, there are 53 boards and commissions, and we've reached out. And it goes anything from fire department to board of ethics, dogs, you know, planning, zoning, those kind of things. And to get the people more informed, we've added one additional agenda item for audience participation. So instead of turning off the mic for people that are testifying, we have turned the mic on another time. And so we have one earlier in the evening, and then we have one later. So, and we haven't had a backlash for that. When I first was elected as mayor, I asked the people, I said,
We will allow clapping if you're on support, but we will not allow booing, no matter how you feel. And be respectful. And people have followed that and been very respectful. And I think that creates, to me, a sense of community, and realize that even though they may disagree with that person on issue A, 2 weeks later they may be both testifying on the same position.
Yeah.
So,
what do you think this state needs in terms of executive leadership right now?
I'm sorry, what?
What do you think the state needs right now when it comes to leadership, particularly in the executive branch?
I think that regarding transparency, I think is very, very important. And just feeling the people in, being that voice for the people, listening to the people. I currently do answer and handle all of my own appointments, and I answer my phone. People are generally very surprised when I answer the phone, and I realize I probably won't be able to do that as governor. But what I am sort of thinking about doing, and I'm pretty sure I will do, I will probably take like a couple days a week and just nonchalantly answer the phone, and so I can keep the pulse, my finger on the pulse of what the people are feeling and how things are facing them. And as being a single mom for 13 years, I can really identify. I was also a real estate agent for a number of years, so I have a feel for the business community. And so we got to realize that we do have issues, but we're all fellow human beings.
Yeah, and you mentioned there you want to make sure you keep your hand on the pulse of how Alaskans are really feeling.
Right.
In your own conversations, going to these different forums, campaigning, speaking to Alaskans, how are Alaskans feeling in 2026?
I think they need hope. And in my opinion, that is one of the reasons I think that the public is so supportive of the LNG project. They know that there is questions, and by the time this interview, hopefully all those questions would have been answered, and they wouldn't be in their 7th special session or something. But I think that's they need to have. They see their kids leaving the state because there are no jobs or opportunities, or not coming home from college. And so I think the people need to have hope, and I think that's a big part of the communication. And the community, I think that's the one thing we have done in the Valley, is try to commit to a community. My slogan is, she listens, she cares, and she acts. And that's in one of the areas, I think that's one of the reasons that I was able to run unopposed the last time, because, and even some people from the other party, when I asked them, when I could see that I was going to be able to run unopposed, I asked them, I said, I'm surprised you don't have somebody. And they said to me time after time, we know that you care. We don't always agree with your issues or how you're going to get us there, but we know you care and you listen. And so that's what I want to bring to the whole state, is that the person that's out in the bush, the person that's in Anchorage, they realize that there is something and somebody that is listening and caring for them.
Yeah. Before we go into policy, I want to ask you one last question. There are, at this point, 17 others running for the same position as you. 4 are going to advance after August. Tell me how you plan to distinguish yourself out from that very big herd.
Well, I am the only candidate that has legislative experience. I served formerly in the Senate for the state of Alaska, as well as had executive experience. I've served previously as the mayor of Palmer for 5 years, and now I'm in my 5th year as mayor of the Mat-Su Borough. I am the only candidate that has used the veto pen, and that takes some gumption. to do that, because you're really putting yourself out there, and as you know and as your listeners know, that we have one of the strongest positions as governor in the whole United States, but you have to be able to and have the courage to do that. And so I think in what I have done shows the courage that I have, and I'm able to do those things.
Yeah, and I guess just maybe quickly on the veto, because the conversations I've had, candidates actually haven't talked about the veto a lot, and I'm thinking about our current governor right now, who's become a little bit infamous for how he uses that veto pen. How would you characterize this current governor's use of the veto pen? Is that something that you think has been tactical, has been beneficial for the state? Or
well,
opposite?
some of them I like and some of them I don't.
There you go. There you go.
But that's what's, again, great about our country and the freedom that we have in not only the state of Alaska, but in the United States, is because I know, knowing the governor very well, because he was on our school board, he was our senator before he was elected governor, and so know him personally very well. And so I know that probably the majority of the time I'm going to agree with his vetoes. And again, I think he's done some excellent explaining of why he's done that veto. And so we'll just ride with it.
Sure, yeah. Well, let's go over to policy now.
Okay.
I want to start just with a pretty broad question. I know you've mentioned transparency in elections several different times. Is that your number one issue going into this campaign, or is there another issue that you think is really top of mind, really something important for Alaska?
I think that, how many choices do I get? I think there's probably 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I think the basis regarding election integrity, and I am been an opponent of the ranked choice, but I think we can do as we have in the Valley done election integrity by getting rid of the machines, counting the ballots at the precinct, so it's not one of these situations where somebody a week later finds ballots in the seat of somebody's car and they can't do that. And in choosing my lieutenant governor, who shares those same visions, as far as I know, he is the only lieutenant governor candidate that has worked the election, and he has seen the difference between when people are using the voting machines and when they're doing paper ballots. And so that I think is one. And that could even be very transparent, I think, because as I said, it is counting the ballots at the precinct. And so that the Mat-Su borough is a second-class borough, so we have very limited borough powers unless the people in our borough vote for. So that gives me some of the things that I would like to relook at in the state government, some things that maybe we are spending money on that we don't need to. It's not a requirement, and there should be some other agencies, churches, nonprofits, just friends, neighbors, helping neighbors, that we could reduce some of that bureaucracy.
Yeah. You mentioned ranked choice voting. I have that as one of my last questions, but you mentioned it, and I actually want to talk about that. Alaskans have the choice to get rid of ranked choice voting in this election. Do you think that's something Alaskans should take, and why?
Yeah. I've signed the petitions both times, and I strongly believe in one man, one vote, and I don't, and by one man, I mean, I plan on voting, so I know it's one female also. So I think in that situation, and you know how the ranked choice goes in the general regarding the ranking, so the person can vote for 4 different people, and I don't think that was the way our country was set up, and so I look forward to it being overturned. Now, of course, if I am
I think you will see the humor in this. If I happen to be one of the four, which I plan on being, but I am second, third, or fourth, I'm going to say, well, I'm glad for ranked choice.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So it can be used and be beneficial personally as well as other ways. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go into some of the top issues now.
Okay.
One of the biggest one, cost of living in the state of this economy, the federal economy too.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how, if you have any sort of policy proposals when it comes to making sure Alaskans aren't really feeling the pain at the pump or at the grocery store.
Well, I don't have a magic wand that I can just, do some pixie dust or some dust or something like that. But and that's one of the reasons I think we're so strong in the Valley regarding our port, is to be able to bring in and have that option, as well as regarding food security. We have a number of agricultural parcels that the borough as well as the state have given, and we encourage people to do container. Doesn't have to be very much, and you can really produce some apples and corn and lettuce and things like that. And the other thing I think in reducing the inflation regarding is to cut the property tax down, and we have one of the lowest sales tax on gasoline in our valley, versus like Anchorage, it has added the 10 cents. So doing those things and reducing the government regulations and overreaches, I think would help a lot. And I was a single mom for 13 years raising 2 children, and so I know exactly what it means when you have to face winter coming, and whether you buy a new coat for each one of the kids. We at that time didn't have some of the wonderful programs now where the churches and nonprofits are giving away free clothing and free shoes and things like that. I'm very happy for that, but a number of years ago we didn't have those things. So I understand what it is to go to the grocery store and count up. And we, of course, didn't have calculators and cell phones back in those days. And so to add up, to be sure that when you got the loaf of bread and the milk and the pound of meat, that you had enough to be able to pay for it and go home and fix a meal for your kids.
Yeah. Public safety concerns are also pretty critical. I'm thinking about here in Anchorage, but also around this entire state. How do you plan on addressing some of these public safety concerns?
Well, I think, as you know, in the Valley, we do not have police powers. That's one of the limits that we have on our government. The city of Palmer and the city of Wasilla both have police departments, and so we rely on the state troopers, which we work closely with. And we're disappointed that there are a number of positions for the state troopers that are not furnished. I think some of the basic laws regarding, we went through that Senate Bill 91 years ago where there was no, they'd be charged and be out before the policeman got out the door because there was no bail. And so I think some of those things, there's still a few of those things that need to be corrected. But I'm very supportive of law enforcement and supportive of them having and being able to enforce the law. Yeah. And I think that's one of the other things is there's no sense in having a law on the book if it is not enforced, or if you treat the enforcer worse than the victim of it.
Yeah. And then in this next category, we're going to go into a couple different areas. It's a very lengthy one, energy and resource development. Obviously crucial, a little bit complicated about how much it really adds to this state. Tell me a little bit about your plan when it comes to energy and resource development here in Alaska.
Okay. as we've said, I don't know what will have happened to the LNG by the time this airs. But we and the borough have been very supportive of the LNG project. I have testified 4 different times in the Senate Resource and Finance Committee, and I've testified twice in the House Resource Committee as well as the Finance Committee, and support. And that is a resolution that was done by the Assembly. And we, from the beginning, have been interested in the volume tax, not in the property tax. And so I know we will find out when this airs. So, and then on the resource development side, as I had mentioned earlier, we are very encouraging in our port. 5 years ago, when I was elected mayor first, the borough manager had just been there 1 year, and one of the very deep discussions he and I had was regarding what to do about Point McKenzie. And so we were up in the air. We talked to the Assembly, we talked to people, we brought it up at agenda meetings and said, okay, should we sell it? Should we give it away? It's almost impossible to mothball it. That's what some of the people were saying. And at that time, you know, it was that whole ferry debacle that had been done, and we didn't have a place on this side, and meaning Anchorage, to be able to dock the ferry. And so we were sitting there with that ferry also. So we know that there are some things in resource development we shouldn't tread on, and we shouldn't go down that path. But right now the port is almost breaking even. Every year we've added 2 more employees to the port. We're bringing in all of the salt, all of the cement for so many areas. We have now barges landing there, as well as ships. It's the only deep water port in Alaska in our area. And so lots of things. There's been a notice from Terrace Sunder regarding the coal power plant, which they would really help for the South Central. Whether they will be able to gather the additional finances or not, that will me, and maybe again by the time this is, you probably have to edit that.
No, it's okay.
Don't make it look too bad.
No, you look great. Let's talk a little bit about economic diversification too. I mean, the price of oil has been dropping over several years now. We've also have this proposed gas line, but whether it gets built and when it gets built is still a little bit of an open question. They say at the point we're talking it'll be the end of this year, but that is also contingent on some big tax breaks that the legislature hasn't been able to get passed yet. So tell me a little bit about how the state needs to lift up its economy in ways outside of energy and resource development.
Okay. Well, in the Valley, we, because tourism is a big item in the state of Alaska, I guess you maybe, unless maybe you're in that industry, you don't really think about that very much, but tourism is a very big thing, and we just in the Valley had a grand opening of the Gateway Visitor Center, which will provide, I believe, more incentives for people to stay longer in the state of Alaska and spend money. And so I think that's one thing we need to do. We need to continue to export fish and those kind of things. Also peonies is a big thing now, because our peonies blossom at a different time of the year than other places internationally do. So I think there are some things like that. It'll take a while for any or all of those, or even something we don't know right now, to be able to counter the dependency we have on gas and oil. And I'm not sure we will ever get away from that, because that's a resource that I believe that we have in the state of Alaska.
and as well as gold. One of the gold miners in our valley has gotten a grant from the feds regarding antimony, and that is an export that we can start doing. They're planning on doing that here within the next couple of years. They're working diligently and being able to bring that to market. So the resources that we have, besides gas and oil, are very much needed in not only the United States but in the world.
Yeah. Last few questions for you. Some of maybe the easiest questions, and I really like these questions too.
Okay.
Big one, why should Alaskans vote for you?
What's Alaska what?
Why should Alaskans vote for you?
Because I care, I listen to them. I feel I have the experience. I know how to work with people, how to respect people, and create that community where we're caring for each other and that we have hope for the future. And so I think I bring all of those things to the forefront.
My last question for you, what does it mean to be Alaskan?
What does it mean to be
Alaskan?
To enjoy God's beauty and the freedom that we have in Alaska, and the people. I love the people of Alaska, and want to see them be able to have better lives.
Edna DeVries, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.